Today we're going to break down how to clean a pike. Now this is a 5-piece method. Most people know pike have a lot of bones. That Y bone is kind of a hard one to get around if you're new to cleaning pike. A lot of times you'll get a handful of crappies and bluegills or something and a pike comes along, and that's a good way to round out a meal for that night. There's a few bare essentials that I like to have when I'm cleaning fish. A bowl of cold water, a 5-gallon pail to discard the guts and carcasses, and then I like an assortment of knives, cutting board. That'll pretty much take care of your needs when it comes to cleaning fish. I usually try to practice bleeding whatever fish I'm cleaning before it reaches the table. That's what I've done here with these two. The other thing when it comes to pike is the slime. The one thing that can kind of help that is if you do catch these in the wintertime, don't freeze them solid, but freeze them just to the point where they're starting to kind of stiffen up a little bit. You still want to be able to run a knife through them, but that helps manage the slime. All right, we're gonna roll up my sleeves here. The first thing I'm gonna do with this is orient the fish in front of me, and I'm gonna set him right on his belly. This initial cut goes behind the head. You come down to the backbone and you run it out. You can do it with either knife, but I prefer the electric for this one. This is probably your most abrasive cut, I would say. So I like to try and save my blades as much as I can. I don't like resharpening knives. The first cut is gonna be right down behind the head, and I'm gonna swing into a 90-degree angle and kind of tip that blade back up and run it right down the backbone. And I'm gonna come back up just before this fin. And right there is the first little piece of meat. Now what you've done is you've just exposed those dirty little Y bones. That's the first thing we want to kind of familiarize ourselves with. This is probably the most important part of this whole process. Once you get this part down, everything else is a cakewalk. That's why I love cleaning the pike like this. I would say that first cut is got to be the top. And then a lot of times what I will do is I'll come over, I'll take my fixed blade, and right about where that last cut terminated, I will take my fixed and I'll run it down the pike to the backbone. And this would be how you would just clean like any other panfish essentially once you get to the back tail section. You come down, you knock that piece of meat out. I won't run my blade right out the end of the tail. I'll leave that little tiny bit of skin attached. That way I'm not trying to hold it with my fingernail or trying to take another knife. Something's already holding it. I just use the fish to actually hold that last little tail piece, and I'll take my fillet knife and I'll just cut that right out of there. Simple as can be. I like to run the fish right near the edge of the board. That way I can lay my knife flat and get as close to the skin as I possibly can. Come down to the backbone, 90 degree, out to the end of the tail. Easy peasy. Realistically, these can go right into the bucket of water. The next part here is we're gonna get the fish on its side. And I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna make a cut down toward the gills, down to the backbone. Again, just a straight cut down behind the gills. I mean, you can do that one at a time or you can do it all at once. It doesn't really matter. Now that I have it laid kind of facing the camera here, you can see this little line. It's a white line. You have the spine right here, and then you have a line of bones, and those are the Y bones, and you can just barely see them there on both sides of the spine. Now our objective is to keep our blade between those bones and the skin of the fish, but ride as close to those bones as you can. That's gonna yield the most meat. And if you come down and you come back into the fish at a little more of an angle, that's just gonna get you a little more meat as well. So I usually start up at the head. I locate that first bone and I start coming in and I just run the tip of that blade right along the outside of that line. And I usually start fairly delicate and just start to get a line going. And then once you start working that blade in, it becomes easier and easier as you go. So once I get that first corner going, I'm gonna flip the fish around so I can do this a little more easily. Once you kind of get this first corner folded back and you start working down that line you initially made, you can kind of just follow that down to the rib cage, and it just sort of naturally takes the blade down to the belly. And I usually just try to feather down, and you'll feel the rib bones will give way eventually once you get down so far. And I don't want to cut the rib bones. I want to get all those rib bones out of there. You can see how they barely start to let go right there. They just let go, just like that. Now you're gonna repeat that on the other side. And you can start from the head or you can start from the tail. I would recommend you start from the head. The bone structure is kind of angled back toward the tail of the fish. So as we work down, it's just, things are more fluid as we work down towards the tail. Once you get this portion of it figured out, it's pretty darn easy. See how those rib bones kind of angle backwards toward you, toward the camera? That's kind of the way I want to feather my knife, is back down toward the tail of the fish. So we've knocked the one side off and we're just doing the same thing to the other. And you can see those rib bones just ever so lightly letting go. And I know I said this was the 5-piece method, but you can see what I've done is just kind of created a sheet of pike. But this way, I feel like I can yield the most meat out of this guy, and I can kind of cut around the fins. I know exactly where the belly meat is. And honestly, I don't mind eating a little of the belly meat when it's not a very big fish, and it's fine. So I just take my knife, I come right down the middle, give or take a little bit. And then I don't want those fins in there. So I'll just come around and cut those fins out of there. And there we are. Now we are truly left with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-piece pike method. Like I mentioned earlier, our tail pieces are filleted and we're just gonna put those in the water. The side pieces are pretty easy. Again, bring the meat all the way to the edge of the cutting board. This is where I do enjoy a larger bladed knife, especially if you do have a little bit larger pike. I'll just come straight down right in the middle of the fillet. That way, again, I don't have to try and hold this with my finger and try and get a blade turned in there. And then I can come back and just knock this piece out. And I have plenty to hold on to. And I'm not gonna cook that piece of fish in its whole length anyways. I'm gonna end up cutting it up just to cook more evenly and just batter it evenly. So there's another couple pieces there. We'll do the same thing with this one quick. Now for the loin, again, similar thing, except if you look at the middle of this piece here, I'll flip it over so you can see it. There's kind of a remnant backbone piece that comes through here. And then if you were to look at this piece of meat, the back is curved naturally. The way that skin holds the meat in place, it's kind of curved. So it really is a little tricky to fillet that out without carving into the skin. So what I like to do is get this piece laid out. I cut that out essentially, but I just cut straight down to the skin. See how that starts to kind of butterfly open? And it just takes a second to do this. It literally is just, you run the blade down the back, right down the middle of it on either side of that remnant bone. And now what's happened is that piece of meat has just splayed right open. Now it's laying flat on the table, right? Now what I've done is just made this a whole lot easier to cleanly fillet off the skin, as well as knock out that middle piece. Come down, take that out just like that, do both sides. And from that initial cut that I had made, running right down the middle, you've kind of just eliminated this chunk of backbone, remnant backbone that's just in the middle of the fish. But it just makes it a lot easier to get that back portion filleted out. But this is what we have here. Here's our top piece. This is the loins, the back straps, if you will, which are right here. And then we have our side pieces, which is right here. And then our two tail pieces, which lay right here. All right, so this is what I am left with when it comes to the 5-piece fillet method for the pike. This is probably my favorite way of doing it. This is what I'm comfortable with. I'm gonna knock this guy out here. So leave a comment if there's any other fish you'd like to see cleaned, but hopefully this helps next time you have a couple pickles in the pail.